Welcome, dear students. Our current session is about American English grammar. I hope and expect by the end of this session you would be able to understand what are the differences in American grammar as compared to the British grammar and what are the distinct features of American grammar. Well, my dear students, if we do a comparison between the American English grammar and the British English grammar, there are a couple of things that we need to understand at the outset. Firstly, when it comes to grammar, generally speaking, I would say there are very few differences in the British and the American varieties. One of the reasons for that is that grammar in itself, when we talk of any language, it changes very slowly and there are very few, changes over the times. If we compare these these differences in the grammar of the American and the British varieties, we can notice that as compared to vocabulary and pronunciation, the number is far lesser. Anyhow, there are a few differences that I would like to point out. The first difference that I'd like to share is the difference in the use of collective nouns. Well, collective nouns refer to a group of individuals. When we talk of American English, collective nouns are singular. For example, staff. Staff in American English is a group of employees. So, the staff is ready. For example, this is how in American English this collective noun would be used. The staff is not available. So, is tells you this is used as a singular. In the same way, band, that is a group of musicians, is also used as a singular. Team is also used as a singular. For example, the team is playing really well. The team is good. When we, compare these examples with the British variety, you would see the difference. For example, on the slide you can see here, at the bottom of the slide, the British English would be, the team are playing tonight. This use of are. In fact, British English uses both the varieties, the team are playing tonight or the team is playing tonight. So both are acceptable in British English. Another difference that I'd like to point out between the American and the British varieties of English is the use of auxiliary verbs. Well, my dear students, verbs that help form a grammatical function are called auxiliary verbs. They help the main verb, that is why they are sometimes called helping verbs as well, by adding information about time, modality, and voice. I would just give you the example of auxiliary verb shall. British sometimes use shall to express the future. For example, if you look at the screen, I shall go home. Here the use of shall refers to future. In comparison to this, when an American would speak, Americans would find it, a bit more formal. Using shall would be more formal for them. So they would go for I will go home now. So I will go is the option that generally Americans take. When it comes to question forms, a British might say, shall we go now? But Americans would say, should we go now? So, this shift from shall to should can be noticed as a shift from the British variety to American variety. Americans express lack of obligation by saying, you do not need to come to work today. This choice of do not need to. This is how they say it. When we compare it with the British, they drop the helping verb and contract not. And they would say, you needn't come to work today. You needn't come to work today, which is a replacement for you do not need to come. So, these are, the differences in terms of when it comes to, choosing obligation. Another distinctive feature of American grammar is that it uses past tense verbs in a slightly different way as compared to the British English. Difference in the past forms of irregular verbs is a distinctive feature. So, for example, the past tense of learn in American English is learned. So, learn, learned, learned. Second and third form both are with ed. If you compare it with the British English, actually it has the option of both learned and learned. So it can be learn, learned, learned, or it can be learn, learned, learned. Some more examples of this use of verbs for the past tense can be seen as dream, dreamed in American, dream, dreamt in the British. Burn, burned, burned in American, and burnt in the British. Lean, leaned in the in the American, and lent in the British. Americans in general tend to use ed, this, at the end of words to, give them second form, whereas British generally use this T at the end. Another distinctive feature that I'd like to talk about is with reference to past participle. This is the most striking morphological difference between general American English and the British English. This is particularly with reference to the form gotten in general American English. This was the usual form in British English almost 2 centuries back, but now it has been dropped on the way. In the past participle form, Americans tend to use "un" at the end, like gotten. I have already given an example for some irregular, verbs. Example is, I have never gotten caught. This is how an American would speak. Whereas when a British has to say the same thing, he or she would say, I have never got caught. So, this "n" ending is not generally used by the British people. It is only a distinctive feature of American English grammar. I hope by considering all these examples, you can realize that the American English has its distinctive features of grammar.